Patch 1.48 of Guilty Gear Strive is here, and people are pretty much heralding this as a really good Guilty Gear Strive patch. Problematic top tiers got nerfs, problematic system mechanics have been toned down, as well as a couple other tweaks here that are overall favorable, and a couple of buffs to some low-tier characters. We're going to look at the system mechanic changes in this video because there is a lot to talk about. Individual character videos will follow soon after. The first big system mechanic change is to the risk level itself. Previously, risk would be applied in the scaling of a combo, where it would effectively remove scaling, meaning that the higher risk gauge you got, the more damage your combos would do. We're going to compare a baseline here with this combo with Soul Bad Guy against Anji Mito. In both versions of the game at 0 risk, it does 214 damage. Now, in the previous system of the game, this same combo with Soul Bad Guy at 50% risk gauge would do quite a bit of damage. We already eclipse it before we get to the end of the combo, and it jumps up to over 300 damage in the combo, just from 50% risk gauge, which really wasn't that hard to get. In the new version of the game, since risk no longer removes combo scaling, instead it lowers the opponent's defense value, the combo damage is dramatically reduced, instead only doing 233 damage, a gain of almost like 19 damage. And we see the same results off of a 100% risk gauge combo. In the old version of the game, this was a monstrous combo doing 351 damage, almost nearly a TOD on Anji. In the current version of the game, with how risk gauge is calculated, it now does significantly less, not even breaking 300. So this actually accomplishes the goal of lowering damage across the board. Just to be thorough, we're also going to use two other character examples. The first one starting off with Chip Zanoff and the damage that he used to receive in the old versions of the game, establishing a baseline of 247 damage. Chip was a character that you would often see posted in Twitter highlight clips about how he could be a TOD'd off of various things. We're establishing the baseline here again that, yeah, he did take higher damage than Anji Mito, but this risk change will greatly improve Chip's survivability. As you can see here, just 50% saw us breaking the 300 barrier quite substantially, getting up to 343 damage. With these changes, though, Chip's survivability greatly improves, as instead of breaking the 300 barrier at 50% tension off of this combo, he still stays underneath that threshold, only seeing a damage increase of about 20 in a long combo like this, and we're going to see more of the same here at a 100% risk gauge. In the old patch, it was monumental damage, and with the right sort of, arrangement of things, you could definitely TOD the character here, almost approaching 400 damage value. But in the current patch, with this new way of calculating risk, the damage is still substantially less. It does crack over 300, but it takes that much risk gauge in order to get Chip to that far, and he's living substantially longer. Looking at a character like Johnny now, who has a lower defense value modifier, which means he takes less damage overall. It does mean that these tanky characters are going to be taking even less damage here, so they will feel relatively bulkier. There are a couple of exceptions, which we'll get into at character-specific videos, as some of them have had their defense modifier value adjusted to take more damage, so I will be doing this combo on them in the future in order to compare it. The Johnny comparison here at 50% risk gauge sees us get to pretty decent values, cracking over 260. Getting up to 287. And in the current patch at 50% risk gauge, it is, again, a very minor increase. So overall, I really like how this sort of reworks the punishing combo game of Guilty Gear Strive, and there's some other changes to risk that we will also discuss, because it seems like R.I.S.C System Works is trying to tone down the overall damage, not only by changing how risk is being calculated and how that affects combos, but also in how much risk is generated. There is a kind of small oversight, arguably, but I think they've kind of prepared for it, and we'll see if it actually comes up in real match scenarios, as you can compare the final damage here on Johnny in this example. It's worth noting that at maximum risk level, defense is reduced by 50% in the new version, and we're going to compare a match practical situation where you probably see some combo damage off of these confirms. Previously, Ramlethal off of a tap dust at full risk would break 255. And in the new patch, the overall return for a situation like this is comparable. It's 30 less damage, still high, but comparable. However, because now the risk gauge interacts with the defense modifier value, there is an important change here. The initial hit that you will connect with an opponent will do increase damage, but then the interaction with the rest of the values will scale the combo down. Previously, your initial hits didn't see any increase in damage until you got to 100% on the risk gauge and got the big counter hit effect. However, in the current patch, because it interacts with the defense modifier value, you start to see increased returns on your your big initial hit. And if you're a character like Blood Range Nagoriyuki, instead of just doing 165 at 50%, you're doing 225 of a 6 heavy, and the results at 100% risk gauge are comical. Now, before we go thinking that R.I.S.C has completely busted the game and Nagoriyuki needs to be nerfed, it is going to be very hard to come across that situation. Not only do you completely remove your risk gauge with burst, but they've also reduced the amount of risk gauge that's built with attack levels 1 and higher. This is all it would take for Ramlethal to get a cracked out risk gauge, not even investing any of her tension gauge into an R.I.S.C. But now, as you can see, that same sequence barely gets it over half, and she has to invest into a Red Roman cancel. I'm not sure if such big highlight clips that we see from Nagoriyuki are actually going to be match practical, or if they're just Twitter fodder clips. Moving on to R.I.S.C, we see a very big change to it, where previously you were right next to the opponent if you were successful in using it, which meant that you could run a strike throw mix that both sides of that strike and that throw could actually beat the opponent's attempt to mash on you with a 4-frame option. This was quite potent, and of course, other characters had various rewards, like Happy Chaos could force a cross-up from this situation. Now, we're going to see the change to R.I.S.C in order to demonstrate how it behaves now, where the opponent gets pushed way far back. So this actually is a really good change, because instead of just saying, nope, it's my turn to run offense now, you can instead reset to neutral. Of course, that utility of immediately taking your turn again when the opponent is trying to fight out of the corner is still there, but this is a really great change to R.I.S.C. And in addition to that, you will see that previously you could not R.I.S.C against Guard Crush, meaning characters that had plenty Guard Crushes in their kit could basically just get around R.I.S.C, but now you can use R.I.S.C against a move that Guard Crushes, a huge nerf to characters like Gold Lewis. R.I.S.C does have a nerf to it as well, where previously the rate in which you would fall to the ground if you blocked a R.I.S.C while in air was a little slow. So if you double jumped at the opponent and had an air-to-air, you basically didn't have a means to punish them. On the ground as well, if you didn't do the specific bait where you had a jump cancel, FD, then you weren't able to get a punish. But now, because you fall to the ground faster, you don't need to jump an FD, you can just simply block it in the air and get a really good punish. Stagger has been reworked, where previously there was 3 different speeds in which you could recover from a stagger based on how rapidly you press buttons in order to get out of it. Kind of like a legacy mechanic where you would have to mash in order to get out of similar things before. This is an example of what it would look like between a slow break, a normal break, and a fast breakout, the frame data varying by about 10 frames. Now, staggers are 1 flat rate. There is no more mashing to get out of them. Instead, you simply recover in the fastest amount of time automatically, sort of streamlining the move and removing a fairly annoying mechanic. This applies to pretty much any move that has a stagger, things like Blue Wild Assault on hit as well. So basically, you should be prepared for the opponent to recover at the fastest possible time. Some other moves have been rebalanced around this change. It's nice to remove this mechanic that could punish players for not reacting fast enough and giving rewards in some situations. Going on to Wild Assault, all of them have seen some nerfs in this patch. Red Wild Assault, I would argue, was the best because on hit, it would give you really good confirms, just like this. And on block, you were able to convert a poke from neutral into running your offense. Being +3 from 6/ a soul bad guy was really strong. Now you can no longer cancel Red Wild Assault on block. Instead, you are in next to the opponent and -3. Really, really good change. Previously, you were -4 on block, but that never really mattered because you would just be canceling this into normals anyway. Now you are -3, thus you are safe from being punished by a 4-frame jab. One very important thing to note, too, is that this basically removes Red Wild Assault's ability to use in high-low mix-ups or tick throws or anything like that, and really cements it as a confirming tool. You can still Red Roman cancel, but that feels really bad to do. I wasn't really able to find much changes about Blue Wild Assault. It does have increased risk level reduction, so it's going to interact with that a little differently, while also increase the combo blowback scaling when the button is not held. As you can see, these 2 combos work just fine, but maybe there's some other combo routes that no longer work. Finally, White Wild Assault has a really good change, where previously this was an invincible advancing move to sort of allow slower characters to skip through neutral. It was -3 on block, but you could RC it to confirm off of it or to force your turn on offense, all the while crossing a large portion of the screen and being completely safe once you had the meter to do it. Now you can no longer Roman cancel White Wild Assault, so you're basically banking everything on this Hail Mary just to get through neutral and get the hit, and there's no way to make yourself safe when you do it and if it fails. The final system mechanic change that I'll also address in specific character videos comes to Overdrive Supers, where previously you could use the 50% tension gauge, start up the super, get the iframes to dodge something, and then PRC. Now all Overdrives will immediately consume on frame number 1, so you can no longer PRC them in the middle of the startup without having 100% tension gauge, as demonstrated here. So a bit of tech that required only half of a tension gauge now requires all of it. If there's anything amiss about some system mechanic changes, do let us know in the comments below. I think this is a really good patch from a system mechanic standpoint because damage should be lower across the board outside of those fringe cases I showed, but I don't think they're really match practical just in the confines of the entire game as a whole. And we'll see where everything plans out. It's really exciting to see where Guilty Gear Strive is heading. More videos are going to be coming out focusing on individual characters.